One of the longest running debates in the Mortal Kombat franchise revolves around the bloodline of Earthrealm's previous champion, the Great Kung Lao. One wouldn't think it would be so complicated, but Mortal Kombat is a franchise that has serious trouble keeping its continuity straight, as I've illustrated in too many videos to count by this point. So let's go back to the beginning and see if we can untangle this yarn ball of a cannon. Welcome to Cannonball. Kung Lao was established as the previous champion who died at the forehands of Goro almost 500 years before the first game. In the second game, his descendant of the same name emerges to join Liu Kang in avenging their massacred Shaolin brethren. Being descended from and named after the previous champion is very important to Kung Lao's character. It comes up regularly in his bios, endings and dialogue, so you wouldn't think it's the kind of thing that could be involved in a decade-spanning misunderstanding, right? But then, in 1995, the same year as MK3, the first Mortal Kombat movie released, and this, my friends, is where it all started. The movie is adapted from MK1 with elements of 2 included. The Great Kung Lao is mentioned, but the modern day Kung Lao is not. Instead, right before the final fight with Shang Tsung, Liu Kang says,
"I am Liu Kang, descendant of Kung Lao."
Now, one not familiar with the franchise might wonder, why does some random inaccuracy in an adaptation matter for the source material? Well, Mortal Kombat is very likely the franchise that is most influenced by its adaptations, short of only Marvel and DC Comics. From Kano's nationality to Liu Kang's relationship with Kitana and Johnny Cage's with Sonya, the movie was hugely influential on not only future adaptations, but also the games themselves. As a result, the confusion really got going 2 years later with the release of Mortal Kombat 4. Goro's bio in MK4 refers to Liu Kang as the Great Kung Lao's ancestor. Obviously, this is a typo and they meant descendant. Despite the error though, the intention was clear. Liu Kang is now a descendant of the Great Kung Lao like in the movie. But what about Kung Lao II? He was absent from MK4 but returned for the enhanced version MK Gold, which continues to acknowledge him as the descendant.
For my ancestor that you killed in Mortal Kombat so many years ago.
But what's strange is that, after this, they didn't mention Liu Kang's connection to the Great Kung Lao again. None of his bios or endings since have mentioned it, and Kung Lao's intense animosity towards him in Shaolin monks for getting to honour his ancestors in the tournament while Lao himself couldn't, really suggests that this was just a weird phase the games went through and grew out of. However, in 2015, a team within NetherRealm Studios developed a mobile version of MKX. In this game, each character is given 3 support cards that buff their stats. These can be items, powers, aspects of their nature, or even relationships such as Cassie Cage's father Johnny Cage, Quan Chi's mind control, and Liu Kang's ancestor, Great Kung Lao. Remember, this game was made by a team within NetherRealm and was presumably approved by the higher-ups like Ed Boon and John Vogel. And no, neither Kung Lao nor Kung Jin received this card once they were added to the game. So, 18 years since the last reference to this idea, we get another one? One might look at this and say it's not canon. After all, it's just a reference in an upgrade in a mobile spin-off with no story. Just like how Reptile has Broodmate Chameleon when there's no indication in the canon that Reptile is even aware of her existence.
I sensed the Sateran. The last Sateran. No.
So what can we conclude from this? It seems that the MK team haven't quite let the idea of Liu Kang being descended from Kung Lao go. It's certainly more flattering to assume this than that they're hiring people who learn the lore by watching 20-year-old movie adaptations. I mean, it certainly explains why they ruined Scorpion, but still. As such, the idea of the two being cousins seems somewhat likely. Lao is from the main branch of the family, while Kang is from an offshoot through a female ancestor. And there is a lot you can do with that idea, as I'll be outlining in the upcoming Kung Lao episode of Wasted Potential. John Tobias, series co-creator and story lead from 1992 to 99, stated in 2016 that the two monks are not related. However, he presumably also wrote Lao's MK2 bio that said he was the last descendant of the Great Kung Lao, which has since been contradicted by the introduction of his cousin Jin in MKX. He may have also written Goro's contradictory MK4 bio. Keep in mind that John Tobias doesn't work at NetherRealm Studios. Aside from the MK vs DCU Collector's Edition comic, he hasn't worked on the franchise since he left Midway in 99. So it seems to me that Tobias didn't intend for Liu Kang to be related to the Kungs, but that the current writing staff perhaps do. After all, this is hardly the first time they've contradicted what he originally wrote for the characters back in the early games. But before we wrap up, I think we need to contemplate the real question here. Why did this happen in the first place? Why did the movie establish Liu Kang as Kung Lao's descendant if there's no evidence to support this in the games, and it doesn't even factor factor into his motivation in the story? Well, I think I have the answer. Movie Liu Kang is a very different character compared to game Liu Kang. Game Liu Kang is a noble warrior monk who has willingly trained his whole life to compete in the tournament, vowing to defend Earthrealm even if it costs him his life. This kind of character is fairly standard for fighting game leads, but for a movie, some might see him as a bit lacking in personality, which is something you want to avoid when we're following his story in the moment, rather than distantly learning the outcome afterwards. Here, he didn't want anything to do with this Mortal Kombat business and left the temple to live a life of peace in America, until the death of his brother at the hands of Outworld's Shang Tsung prompted him to return to compete in the tournament for revenge. It's kind of like in MK2 when Kung Lao didn't want anything to do with this Mortal Kombat business and left the temple to live a life of peace, until the death of his Shaolin brothers at the hands of Outworld's forces prompted him to return and compete in the Outworld tournament for revenge. Movie Liu Kang is an amalgamation of game Liu Kang and game Kung Lao, similar to the Super Smash Bros. Version of Metal Gear Snake. He borrows the appearance, role and fighting style of Liu Kang with the motivation and personality of Kung Lao for added flavour. This is why Liu Kang is the great Kung Lao's descendant and why Kung Lao II never appears. Liu Kang is already half Kung Lao. If you liked this video, why not subscribe, check the description for more content and support me on Patreon like these fine people here. If not, then make sure to let me know why in the comments so that this show can get better from here.